Hi, folks. I'm Steve. Thank you for joining me for this session. It's going to be a little bit of an unusual workshop format. It's going to be more of a tour, but I'm going to take you through what it looks like to run a workshop where we're looking at the flow of value through an organization and looking to implement some quality metrics that will allow us to track our performance and make sure that we're headed in the right direction. So first off, I want to assure you that I'm going to share a ton of information with you. It's going to go by very quickly, but you'll be able to come back to it anytime. I'm going to share a ton of resources and some further material. I'm also going to be available for meetings, so I will be able to take you through any part of this that you're very curious about. I'm also going to be in the chat, so I'll be there answering questions, tackling anything that you want to talk about while the session's going on. So with that, I'm going to get us moving through this presentation, and hopefully you get a ton of value from it. So first of all, where I'm headed with this, the outcomes that I'm looking to deliver with this workshop are, I want to share with you my approach for getting clarity with a team. So oftentimes we have very different opinions about where we should be going, what's happening, what the situation looks like. And so these are a set of techniques to get clarity with the team in an organization where we might have tons of stuff going on. It's also going to help us align our perspectives. So we all have different perspectives. Often in a team, I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that everybody can have a different idea about what to do next, what's going on, and what situation we're in. So these techniques will allow us to combine our perspectives and get on the same page and get aligned in the same direction. They're also going to boost confidence. So confidence is really important because it saves time, it makes us feel better about our work, and it allows us to really feel like we're headed in the right direction. So the mapping techniques that I'm going to share with you are going to boost our awareness of our current situation, awareness of possibilities, awareness of gaps, risks, opportunities, and really help us feel better about where we're headed. And I think that's incredibly valuable, especially in 2021. The other thing is that it's going to show us a path to getting momentum and really making progress with where we want to go. And that's where the traction part comes in. So in the agenda, what we're going to tackle first is what I call value stream thinking. And this term has been around for a while. I didn't invent it, but I think it's a very powerful way of seeing organizations as a collection of value streams and seeing work in terms of flow. And I'm going to tell you more about that and why it's so important. Next is flow engineering, which is really a concept that I came up with in the software world. It comes from fluid dynamics, but in the realm of knowledge work, what we're talking about with flow engineering is how to maximize the flow of value through organizations and how to do that very deliberately and with a set of practical techniques that you can start using today. And then I'm going to introduce these 4 key maps, which I use with clients to take them from rough ideas or pains or opportunities all the way to an actionable roadmap. And speaking of roadmaps, I've got a bonus in there for you if you stick around. So what I hope you get out of this is an understanding of value stream thinking, an understanding of flow engineering, how to identify a key target, pick a high quality, high value target, understand how the 4 key maps can help you reach that target, and then see clear next steps to get started. So flow engineering, what is flow engineering? There's a lot in here. Really, it's the practice of improving the flow of value through organizations. And this is a tiny sample of what it looks like. And it's a developing practice that is always changing and evolving. and adapting to new techniques and new learning. But it really is this area of practice dedicated to improving the flow of value through organizations, specifically inside of value streams and inside of a value stream way of looking at organizations. So to set the stage here, what I often talk about, and I find very, very useful to illustrate concepts and how I want to introduce some concepts to you, are the ideas of compasses and maps. And I think that in organizations and in the industry of tech, we're very good at compasses. We're very good at setting targets. We know about OKRs. We know the value of setting measurements and tracking performance. But really, what we need to do to make progress and to actually reach our destinations is combine compasses with maps, right? A compass without a map can lead you to a dead end very quickly. So having a map to combine with our compasses is extremely valuable. It allows us to survey the terrain and pick the right path to move forward. So I like using these concepts on a regular basis. Feel free to borrow them, use them yourself. I find it's very helpful to put things in these buckets so that I can think about balance, right? I don't want too much mapping without a high quality compass. Likewise, I don't really want a compass unless I have a map that's going to make it actionable. More key terms that I think are important to setting the groundwork here. Value is a challenging one to define, but really the way that I see it is fulfilling an organization, an employee, or a customer desire or need. So delivering something that is really important, high quality, high utility in the context of a given customer. A value stream is the sequence of activities performed to deliver that value. So we can see it as the flow of activity, but always focused on the customer, always focused on delivering value to a customer. Traction is something that I like to talk about with teams because we love progress, right? We love to make progress. It makes us feel like we're doing something valuable. But we need to see progress. We need to see change. We need to see improvement on a regular basis, or else we feel like we're spinning our wheels. So traction is something that I also like to talk about. And flow really comes into contact with ideas like continuous delivery and being in a state of flow. And I think that we can be in a state of flow as individuals, certainly when we kind of lose track of time and we're just enjoying our work so much, but we can do that as a team as well, and we can do that as organizations. And that really is so important these days when there's so many interruptions, there's so much complexity, there's so much friction in organizations. So flow is such a powerful concept for getting the most out of our work. So an illustration of a value stream, to dive further into this, because value streams are what I'm obsessed with, and I think really are growing in importance in the tech industry and across business in general, as we see everything sort of flowing together and everything connected in much broader terms than merely DevOps or merely software development. I see value streams everywhere, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But essentially what we're looking at here is the flow from an idea to a customer that we want to satisfy, and all of the steps and all of the activities that are involved there. And this is kind of like bumping up against some traditional patterns that we see in organizations. We are kind of obsessed with org charts in organizations and companies and corporations. That structure, how we know where we sit on the totem pole, that can drive a lot of negative behavior and a lot of static thinking that is not really conducive to delivering value to customers. And what I mean by that is that if we're looking at the flow of value through the organization, through an idea or the inception of something that we've got to tackle, all the way to the customer, it really bounces all over our org chart right now, right? We might have approvals in one area. We might have to consult the legal team. We might have to have designers brought in for a part of the activity. And oftentimes there's no shared context. There's no real flow. A lot of this is a lot of waiting, a lot of friction, a lot of queuing, and it is not in service of maximum performance. So what we're looking for here is really to align our efforts into these value streams that facilitate the flow of value to our customers. And this is more the pattern that I see arising in the most successful organizations today, is that they see their work in terms of value streams. They see that they have an interplay of all of this flow and a lot of parallel activities. And this is, of course, oversimplified. But what we see here is that there's really no big difference between the flow of value in sales, the flow of value in operations, the flow of value in any given product or our platforms, and even our partnerships. The patterns, the systems and processes that are involved in delivering value in each of those contexts looks a lot more like a flow than this sort of ping pong around the org chart if we're designing it properly. And I think that what we'll see in the industry as things like value stream management and value stream thinking arise to a lot more prominence and awareness, that companies start to realign themselves along this flow of value to maximize the performance and minimize the friction of doing that. Flow engineering is really about maximizing those value streams. It's really about maximizing the flow of value across all those value streams and looking at the big picture of the organization from a zoomed out perspective to see the big picture and the biggest opportunities, and then zooming into the biggest opportunities and seeing in detail where it's really valuable to look at how everything works behind the scenes. So in order for us to maximize flow, we have to first see the big system and then dive into the details to unblock the bottlenecks, to target the constraints that we see in the flow. So the 4x4 method is really a way of bringing a value stream context to something that a lot of the tech industry has been focused on in the past few years. DevOps and the 4 key metrics that have been connected to the highest performing organizations. And so those 4 key metrics, using the compasses and maps analogy, they're 4 great compasses that can indicate where you want to focus in order to optimize performance. Because we can't focus everywhere, but we also have to make sure that if we focus in any specific place, that we're balancing that focus with a responsible countermeasure. For instance, if I focus entirely on lead time for changes, then I could be firing out work that is of low quality, right? That's actually going to raise my change failure rate to an unacceptable level. It might actually increase my time to restore service, right? So these 4 compasses need to be balanced so that we're not heading in the wrong direction or overemphasizing any specific metric. The maps that I put into the 4 key maps are starting with outcome, starting with a clear direction, looking at that from a few different angles. So taking a desired outcome and analyzing it. And then the value stream is representing the current state of flow towards that outcome, so that we can see where we're being held back, where we might have opportunities for improvement in the flow involved in that outcome. And dependency maps really allow us to look outside of a value stream or outside of a team to see what external effects are impacting the team. And then likewise with capability maps, we're looking inside the team at what internal factors are affecting the team. And I'm going to go into exactly what those look like, exactly what they mean to this whole process, and how they kind of flow together as well. So more on the 4 key metrics. They're in sort of like 2 key categories here. We're focused on velocity, how fast the organization can deliver value, but then also stability, how consistently and sustainably can the organization deliver value. And they come out of DORA, the DevOps Research Association, and this great book called Accelerate. If you haven't heard of them before, they're definitely worth a look. And I will share links to more material about that later in the presentation. But before I get started on metrics and measurements and we go too far with the 4 key metrics, it's really important to focus more on outcomes than any given measurement, right? We want to be focused on a desired outcome, hopefully something that impacts our customers positively, before we pick a metric and start heading in a specific direction to drive down lead time or drive up the frequency of deployment. That should be linked to something much more important, like satisfying customers, for instance. So it's important to not focus too much on these 4 key metrics. They're correlated with success. It doesn't mean that measuring all 4 of them gets you off the hook and that's all you have to measure. It doesn't even mean that those 4 metrics are the most important ones to measure. Your most valuable measurements are going to be defined by your target outcome. So that's exactly why we look at outcomes and look at outcome mapping to really figure out what is the most important thing that we should measure. What are the things in our way that we need to address and that we need to track our progress against? So considering that, if we have a desired outcome that we want to release every 2 weeks, right now, maybe the organization releases every 6 months or every quarter, and they want to get that down to 2 weeks because they want faster feedback from customers, or they want to satisfy their customers by introducing changes more often that they're asking for. And so there's a lot of reasons why that could be valuable. But let's say, we run this brainstorming session, we come up with a bunch of different outcomes, and the team agrees that we want to release every 2 weeks. We think that's a very valuable outcome to strive for in the service of satisfying our customers, or something much more important than just targeting that specific deliverable. Then what we would do is sort of turn that outcome around from a few different angles and look at what's really involved in getting there. We want to consider our outcome before we start heading off in any specific direction, because we might immediately trip over something that was easy to see if we just took a second and thought about where we are and what's in between us and that target outcome. So a really valuable exercise to do here is a press release. So beginning with the end in mind, thinking of what would it look like if we succeed in delivering this outcome? What's it going to mean to our customers? What are people going to say about it? What are we going to say about it? How's it going to feel when we achieve this? And that can really help to clarify a team's understanding of what is really important about this. What is going to get us all excited about it and aligned on the same page, where instead of having 8 different opinions about what we should be doing, we can all get together and really agree or disagree and commit to this outcome and really be proud of it before we start heading off in a specific direction. So we want to look at why. We want to look at why is this a valuable outcome? Let's consider what's really valuable about that. Because we don't want to just do stuff that we think is probably a good idea, right? It has to seem like a powerful, valuable thing. So considering why helps us analyze the outcome and come to a deeper understanding about the value that it provides and whether it really is the most important thing that we should be doing. Then after that, we look at obstacles. We look at what is going to be in our way here. Like, what are the challenges that have prevented us from getting there in the past, if we've tried it already? Or what can we anticipate is going to get in our way and impact our odds of success here? Because we want to start with clear understanding. We want to be realistic about what is ahead of us when we set off in a specific direction. So we can look at a lot more dimensions here. We can consider vision and values and how they relate to that target outcome. We want to make sure that our outcome is aligned with the organization as a whole and the things that we find important in general, right? You don't want an outcome that is in violation of your values or somehow forces you to choose between one or the other or puts you in a difficult position. So considering vision and values can be really important. We want to look at investigations and experiments that we can conduct to really quickly evaluate, should we try this? How should we approach this specific challenge? How can we tackle this obstacle? And some of these become clear after we do the subsequent maps, the other 3 maps in this process. They will arise out of the data that we collect by mapping everything else, which is why they're not included in that example. They come later. Likewise, with measurement and metrics, very important to consider early on, but we don't know what to measure until we know what our biggest bottlenecks are, where we have got gaps and opportunities and risks. Measurements really should follow a more thorough investigation of what is our current state, what are we dealing with right now. We can also look at roles. So who's involved in this outcome? Who do we need to include? Who do we need to bring along for the ride or consult or advise? And methods are going to follow last. You know, what we decide to actually do should follow a lot of this data collection that informs us what is valuable to do, what's important to do, what do we have to do to satisfy the metrics that we've chosen to make an impact on those measurements. That's the last thing that we should do before setting off in the direction that we choose. But we can add all this to the picture and build out this map that includes all these factors and really gives us a rich visual representation of what's it really going to take to get there. So the ultimate value of an outcome map is it really aligns our perspectives early on. It gets us on the same page. It gets us to tease apart an outcome and really understand it and really collectively understand it, because it's not really valuable if one person on the team gets it and everyone else is lost. And then we have to go away and work on our own, heading in different directions, right? We want to be on the same page. We want to really consider our outcomes from many different angles, from more than just, yeah, that sounds good, let's go do it. What's it going to take, right? What is really going to go into delivering this outcome? So we want to consider why it's important, what's in the way. Next, we come to the value stream map. So let's say we decide that releasing every 2 weeks is our goal. We want to feature that right up front. That should always be in view to remind us that this is what we're trying to get to. And a value stream map is really a depiction of a process, a depiction of a series of activities in the value stream, coupled with data. So that's the important thing between a value stream map and just a process diagram. We're looking at real data of how that process is performing currently and how it's delivering value to customers. The really important thing about a value stream map is that it's in the context of a customer outcome and a customer deliverable. So what we're looking at here, this is just a simple 6-step representation of a value stream, but you can see above the measurement of timing for each of the steps And then in between below, this is the delay time. So this is a very simple representation. When I make value stream maps, I want them to be really easily understood by anybody, whether they just joined the company or whether they are a C-level executive or they've been there for 20 years. I want it to be very clear and very easy to understand. So this representation of the activities in the value stream and the timing involved is kind of the simplest way that we can represent a value stream and still get value from it. So you can see that by looking at all of the measurements here, 7 hours pops out as the highest number. It's also a delay. It's also a wait between step 2 and 3. So perhaps that's something that we want to look at further. There's likely an opportunity to trim that down. That is kind of an easy starting point, but usually what we find when we look at a value stream map is 2 or 3 immediate opportunities for improvement. And they just pop out because we don't typically look at what we're doing on a regular basis. We don't step away from our work to consider how our work is going and how we could be working better. So you usually find with a value stream map that you find 20% of the value stream, you can eliminate the waste of 20% of the value stream immediately. And that can mean 1 day a week that you save. And you can put that towards innovation or cleaning up technical debt or whatever you want to use it for. But those opportunities are usually sitting there waiting for someone to take a look and discover them. So what can we do with value stream maps? Beyond the basics, this depiction in the bottom right, you'll see is a much more complex representation of a value stream map, but it's only depicting additional detail, additional dimensions that we can look at that give us more information about what's going on in the value stream. So we can see things like roles, quality, value added time. So how much time are we actually adding value that our customer would actually care about? And that can be our customer as the business, because the business doesn't want us to do anything risky or violate security protocols. But we can really look at like what value are we actually adding with all of these things that we're doing. And that can be really powerful insight and help us design a better process and a better system. We can also look at volatility. So if things always take a different amount of time and we can never predict how long anything will take, we can highlight that and maybe there's something that we can do about it. We can also look at tools and artifacts. We can see where people are jumping in between different systems. Maybe there's opportunities to streamline that a little bit and simplify and really optimize the flow, right? Make sure that there's fewer interruptions, make sure that we're able to spend as much time creating and delivering value as possible. So beyond that representation, what we can do beyond a current state where we find those immediate low-hanging fruit opportunities is we start to design the value stream. And the way that we design the value stream is first, we look at an ideal state. So we step away and say, if we could change everything, or if we could really change the way that this work flows, if we could really change the value stream any way that we wanted, what would it look like? And this is an opportunity to be creative. It's an opportunity to innovate and really reimagine how we're doing work. And then we come back to earth and we look at the future state. So considering the resources we have, the capabilities that we have, the dependencies that we have, what will a likely future state look like? And we haven't got into dependencies and capabilities yet, but they will inform this future state and make it very realistic so that with a high degree of confidence, we can say, this is where we're going in the next 3 to 6 months. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to be 8 times faster, or we're going to improve quality by 100%. There's a lot of ways that we can design a future state to address our biggest gaps or issues or opportunities. So in a nutshell, what we're talking about with value stream mapping is seeing things and measuring things. And whether that's the big picture or in detail, we can zoom this to whatever level we want. If we want to look at releases, We can look at the release value stream. If we want to look at sprints, we can look at the sprint value stream and pick them apart and discover where the opportunities are. And the opportunities could be doing things better, it could be doing things differently, and it could be doing different things. We could change the way that we do things by using this practice and leveraging data to make our decisions. So on to dependency mapping. The next thing that I like to do with teams that I think is really valuable is look beyond the team, because often in most organizations today, we have connections, really tight connections between teams and teams that they depend on, services they depend on, approvals they depend on. There's all kinds of stuff that ties a team to other parts of the organization, and often in ways that slow the team down, right? If we have to wait to be a part of a team meeting before we can get approval to release a feature, these can be really painful and costly dependencies and delays. So we want to make sure that we can see them and see whether there's something we can do about them. Because as we start adopting value stream thinking and value stream design in organizations, we start to see the value of decoupling, right? And having autonomous teams that can work unhindered at the maximum velocity that they're capable of. And that means breaking dependencies. Not necessarily technical dependencies, although we can represent technical dependencies in this dependency map. It goes much more beyond tech. It goes into rituals that we're a part of, big SLAs, and all kinds of things that tie our teams to other teams. And often that results in tons of delay and friction. So seeing it is the first step towards fixing it. So with a dependency map, what we're doing is assessing external impacts. So we're looking outside the team, what is impacting the team from outside? And it can be anything from SLAs to shared services, meetings, approvals, legal consultation, partners, and regulation and compliance that teams have to satisfy. And usually we don't have APIs for these things. You know, it's an email or a meeting or a conversation that we have to have in order to move forward. So seeing what's going on is the first step to improving what's going on. Next is the capability map. And this is looking inside the team towards the capabilities that are most important to the value stream at this moment, or to the future of the value stream. You know, if we're looking at making progress, we want to address current issues. We also want to design for the future. So this isn't looking at every capability. The first thing we do here is capability discovery based on the value stream map. So we look at the value stream map, where are the constraints, where are the opportunities, what capabilities would allow us to address the issues in the value stream or the opportunities in the value stream, but also make us more autonomous, break dependencies, right? So we're looking at this third because it relies on the first two maps. The first three maps, actually. You know, what capabilities are going to help us deliver our target outcome as well? So all of these maps are building on each other. By the time we get to capability mapping, we have a really clear understanding of where we are and where we want to go and what is in our way. So the capability mapping exercise is really looking at inside the team, what's it going to take for us to level up? What's it going to take for us to achieve a higher level of performance and really make significant progress in improving the flow of value through the organization and improving our flow of value as a team. So here we have 4 as an example. I usually have around 8 to 10 capabilities that are linked directly to opportunities or risks inside of the value stream or outside with dependencies. So if we want to break a dependency on a shared services team, for instance, we probably have to leverage an API for the thing that we're going to them for, right? Or maybe we have to develop that capability internally. Maybe there is a fast track opportunity where we can say, 80% of the time, we're going to be able to do this activity ourselves. And then if it hits a specific case, we're going to go tap the shared services team. But that's going to be the exception rather than the rule. So we will have effectively addressed that dependency and allowed ourselves to move faster with this express lane option. But still having the ability to leverage shared services where they're valuable. And this is a lot of what we can do with capabilities. So looking at this map, we can see a few capabilities here. This idea of a prime is really an owner for a specific capability. And most of the time we don't have owners for capabilities, although that's incredibly valuable. But it can be the go-to person, right? If we have a problem with test automation, who do we ask? Who's going to be the person who steps up and tackles a problem with test automation? And maybe they have a backup, maybe they don't. Maybe they have someone who could step in and do that job if they're not available, or they're away on vacation, or maybe they move on to another team. Who would take over, right? Who would be available? Or maybe we have so much to do that we need, a prime and a backup to make sure that things stay on track. But not knowing these roles and not knowing where we are with our capabilities is a big risk. We can look at the level of skill that we have as a team. And I think it's important that all of this is in the context of the team. Even though we have primes and backups, what we really need is a team that's capable of delivering on capabilities. So we look at a skill level across the team. We also look at resources. So what's available to the people who are doing this work, who are providing this capability? Do they have lots of documentation? Do they have APIs that they can leverage? Are they using a third-party service? So they don't really have to know very much about it, but they're able to leverage that capability. Next, we look at training. So how long would it take for us to train? So let's say in this case of test automation, Sam is a prime, there's no backup. What would it take? How long would it take us to train a backup so that Sam can go on vacation finally? Because you can see Sam is prime on a lot of these capabilities. So if Sam's getting burnt out, or Sam is tired of pulling everything along, maybe we want to train somebody to come in and support. So how long it takes to train somebody is another really important factor in capabilities. And then finally, what we do is kind of add all of this up and get a feel for where are we scoring with all these capabilities? Where should we focus our energy first? Where are the biggest risks? Where are the biggest opportunities? So the capability map, to summarize, is really about assessing internal impacts. So inside the value stream, what is impacting the team's ability to deliver that performance, that value to customers? And what we do, we look at ownership, we look at support, we look at things like documentation, APIs, services that we can leverage, and we also look at training. Oftentimes, I'll also look at comfort with the team. I'll take the temperature of the team and say, how comfortable are we with this capability? Have we been doing it for a very long time? Or is this new territory that's a little bit uncomfortable? Because all of that can factor into where we should focus our energy. We don't want to be uncomfortable. It's nice to be learning, but hopefully we're making progress, right? So maybe we could dedicate more energy, or maybe we set a different target and look in a different direction. So looking at the 4 key maps from start to finish, we're starting with clarity. We're beginning with the end in mind. And we get that clarity by looking at the outcome from many different angles, to really flesh it out, to really understand it and internalize it, and gain alignment as a team, to be on the same page, to be rowing together in the same direction. Then what we look at is measuring flow, right? Are we rowing through sand? Are we stuck on a log? Are we rowing through water where the current is helping us? That's all really important information to achieving our target outcomes, regardless of what they are. These outcomes could be, we want to boost our diversity and inclusion. So what is the process that we're using to do that? What is the system that we're leveraging? What is the value stream that is contributing to that outcome? And so these concepts really can work in any part of the organization for any outcome. But if you can find one that I haven't thought of, and you have an idea about where this breaks down, please let me know. I love to have conversations about where you see gaps in this and where you see that this wouldn't tackle a specific issue in an organization, because I want counterpoints as well. I want to be able to tell people, use it for this, don't use it for this. But I love testing this in all kinds of different environments. And I love hearing from folks who are using it in all kinds of different new and exciting ways. So beyond flow, what we look at is dependencies. So what's happening outside the team, what's happening outside the value stream that is affecting the value stream and affecting the flow of value. And then that brings us to capability mapping to look at what's happening inside the value stream. What's happening in the team? What do we need to level up the performance of the team? And that doesn't mean working harder. It's working smarter. It's working with more support, more resources, more automation that allows us to focus on the human aspects, what we bring to the job, the things that aren't manual toil, that aren't just grinding away. Where can we add the most value as contributors and as part of a team? So beyond the 4 maps, there's more, because what's making all of this actionable, right? How do we take all this data and information and insight that we collected and actually do something with it? And so this is where we get into prioritization. And prioritization is a well-traveled path. There's many different methods to use for prioritization. You can use impact versus effort. There's tons of different ways that you could prioritize. I will leave that to your further investigation or your current process. But we can take all the data and insight that we've gathered from creating these 4 maps and plot them. And so we can tackle the highest priority, most valuable initiatives. And that makes us one step closer to actually making progress, to actually actioning our insights. And that's really important, right? We don't want a bunch of these insights to just sit around waiting for someone to do something with them. We want to go straight from discovering an opportunity to making progress towards that opportunity. So this is really visualization, clustering, discovery, and alignment exercise to get on the same page. This doesn't have to be the exact same team, but oftentimes you can take the exact same team all the way through this process, and they can be prioritizing their own initiatives, which means they're more bought in, they own it, and they're more excited about doing the work. But once we've got those priorities, what we can look at is creating what I call a flow roadmap. So flow roadmap is this layer of how that sits between your product roadmap and your technical roadmap, because both of those don't talk about how you're going to get there. And I think that's a major gap. I think there's a big opportunity for us to create a roadmap that really answers the question of how is any of this going to happen? How are we actually going to deliver any of these things? And so the flow roadmap really puts us in a position where we can be looking at what are our targets and how are we going to achieve them? And what's going to tell us that we are on track and making progress? So I think that's really valuable artifact coming out of this process. And it really sets the team up with a sense of clarity and confidence that we've got a path to success. We know exactly what we're doing. We know where we need to go. We know how we're going to get there. And we can start right now. So one more note that's bringing me back to the 4 key metrics of DevOps. I want to remind everybody that setting these as a target should be in service of a greater outcome, right? So when we look at releasing every 2 weeks, we want to make sure that we're not losing sight of everything else that we need to measure, everything else that we need to keep track of. So if we're releasing every 2 weeks, we're probably looking at deployment frequency and lead time for change, and those are going to be a focus. But we can't forget about stability, the other side of that metric balance. And any time that you pick metrics, it's really important to balance your metrics because you don't want to lose track of what's keeping you on the right path, right? You don't want to slide off by focusing too far in one direction and sacrifice quality or sacrifice something that's going to put you at risk, right? You don't want to sacrifice security just because you want to go faster, for instance. And you can't forget about your regulatory compliance obligations because you want to go faster. So using a balanced series of metrics, which is another value of picking 4, right? Picking more than one, making sure that they are balanced, making sure you're looking at your target and setting your target from a few different angles, right? You're looking at it from a few different angles. You're really considering, okay, what's it going to take? What's going to drive us to make the right decisions and allow us to be confident that we're staying on the right track? So tracking more than one metric is always a great way of making sure that you've got that balance, that you can see more than just a tunnel vision view of where you want to go. So considering release every 2 weeks, what did we discover? So we started with clarifying and aligning our views, aligning our perspectives, collecting our different perspectives and putting them all together in the same view. We discovered how we can go from pains and ideas to actual action and next steps, things that are going to actually make a difference and, get rid of pains and allow us to capitalize on ideas. It provided us methods of using data to level up, to improve and affect the performance of our teams. We've got a way of seeing more than just our day-to-day, right? I think it's so important for us to step back and see the big picture of how is all this working, right? What is the machine that's delivering value? And what are the dials and levers available to us to improve the performance of that machine? What should that machine look like? How should it work? How can we design the best machine for delivering customer value? And facilitating the human aspects of that work, right? How do we make a machine that helps us be more creative and spend more time coming up with ideas and conducting experiments and doing the exciting, fun things that we want to do, and make sure that nothing falls off the rails. Make sure that, we can rely on a consistent, high quality process that's going to provide us the time and the freedom to explore things and experiment and really move our organization forward. And providing that in a way that's collaborative. This is all through Mural, which is a collaborative whiteboard. That means everybody has the same view. Everybody can see what's going on. Everyone can contribute, which means everyone is bought in and everyone is aligned from the very beginning. And that's really rare and super powerful these days. So if we began with release every 2 weeks, what is the path that we follow with this workshop format? We consider what'll make this actually happen. What's going to make this a reality? And we step back to look at what are we doing now? Because obviously, where we are right now is we might have a lot of things in the way between us and where we want to go. We consider what could we be doing differently? What would good look like? What would better look like? We want to consider what's affecting us from outside of our team. Maybe it's time to address something that's been slowing us down for a very long time, or been, adding a ton of friction and toil to our work. Maybe we have an opportunity to address it if we can only see it and then demonstrate what we see to other people in the organization, or make really high quality recommendations for changes. Then we're looking at what's affecting us from inside. What might prevent us from reaching our goals based on gaps that we have or support that we need. And then where should we go? So leveraging all this data, what should we do? What should be our next steps? What are the highest priority opportunities that we can tackle to really make a difference? And that informs our starting point, right? Those highest priority items that are the lowest effort, but the highest impact, are really going to give us a actionable starting point that we can begin on the next day, or even right after we finish a workshop. And ultimately, this is informing the plan. This is informing our ability to confidently say, this is what we're going to do, and be excited about that, and be very confident that we have the clarity and the data required to make good decisions and make real progress. So what does it take to do all of this stuff? Obviously, this is not trivial. It doesn't happen overnight. But starting with a skilled facilitator, whether that's someone in your organization who's used to running collaborative workshops, used to bringing people together, it could be a business analyst, it could be a scrum master, it could be a product owner, it could be you, it can be leadership, it can be someone who is just really good at giving people space to come together and collaborate. And to do that collaboration, my favorite tool now, it used to be a regular whiteboard. Now it's a collaborative online whiteboard. I use Mural. You can use Miro. You can use Google Drawings. I've used that in the past. You can use anything that allows people to share the same view and ideally add their own inputs. And this happens over the course of about 6 to 12, depending on scope, depending on the size of the organization and the team. It can be more than this, it can be less than this, and it depends on the purpose. But I try not to do really long workshops. We want to keep people energized. We don't want to be stealing them away from their work for too long. So 2-hour sessions are great as long as they are well planned and well executed. And we want representation from across the value stream for these sessions. We want leadership because we want them to be able to say, yes, let's do that. And here are the resources, or here's the permission to do that. Here's the support to do that. But we want product ownership if we're talking about a product value stream. We want Scrum facilitators. We want, in some cases, we want data folks. We want sales and marketing sometimes, because oftentimes what happens is work gets thrown to the sales and marketing team and says, here's a bunch of stuff, you need to tell people about it, but we haven't written any of the documentation, so good luck. So oftentimes when we think in terms of value streams, when we use this value stream thinking, what happens is we start to realize, oh, wait, we really should be bringing in sales and marketing early on while we're planning a release, because we want them to be able to hit the ground running when it's their turn to take the work that we produce and send it to customers or tell people about it. We want them to be empowered to do their job at the highest level that they can. And so getting representation from all these different perspectives across the value stream is really important. We don't need 4 developers to be part of it, but ideally we have maybe a senior and a junior to get 2 different perspectives on how things are going. And that helps us build this rich understanding of what's happening and what we can do about it. So what do you get out of this process? I've seen cases where clients save $20 million by not investing in something that's not going to make a difference, and instead targeting that investment at their most important and critical and valuable bottleneck or constraint to address, their biggest opportunity. which is usually not what we assume. It's usually not what we think, and certainly not the same thing that everybody thinks. If you ask 8 people what the biggest opportunity is, you will get 8 answers. And so by looking at the value stream, we can save ourselves from making assumptions that can cost a lot of money, or help us or cause us to miss an opportunity. Likewise, before we invest in any specific solution, if we target our biggest opportunity and not something that we assume is going to make a difference, we can save lots of time. Because if we make a decision to invest in a solution or an improvement, if it's not backed by data and it's not the right thing to work on, we probably won't find out for 18 months, right? That we should have been focused elsewhere. I've seen teams save 1 day a week, like just by doing a current state value stream map. They got 1 day a week where they were in unproductive meetings, where they had lots of handoffs, and we tweaked a couple things, and all of a sudden they got their 20% time to work on paying down technical debt or building prototypes, experiments, all kinds of things, whatever they wanted. We boost morale and performance because we're including people and getting them bought in and getting them aligned and getting them excited about making improvements very obvious and accessible to people. These are things that we can do without buying a new tool or automating a ton of stuff. We're targeting very specific opportunities. And because of that focus, we're able to use a lot of leverage. We can target the entire team at solving a problem instead of just picking away at different things all the time and not making any progress. But you can really boost whatever you want. If you want higher quality, more value delivered to your customers, happier customers, happier employees, it's really up to you where you set your targets. And that's what the outcome mapping and starting from outcomes is really all about. So there's a lot to this. Feel free to screen cap this if you want, but really this is talking about exactly what we covered in this workshop, just with samples of what this really looks like. These are all remote-friendly activities, all done in collaborative mapping, and they really flow together to go from idea to realization and action. So that's really it for me. I want to direct you to a few resources for more information. Again, I am always available. I'm always on LinkedIn answering questions. I am always available for meetings and chats. If you're curious about any of this material, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear about your challenges and where you see value in value stream thinking and the flow engineering approaches. There's a lot more resources available. I just spun up a site called Value Stream Link, which really just connects you to every tool vendor there is in the value stream world, a bunch of resources, a bunch of talks and white papers and guides and open source tools as well. So whatever your motivation is here, whatever you want to get out of this, hopefully I provided something that really helps you get started and move in the right direction. But I'm around and I'd love to talk to you about it. I'll see you later. Thank you very much.